स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतङ्गमय। Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us offer our salutations to Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of all religions, the Supreme God incarnate, who came to establish religion universal. Let us pray to Him to lead us from the unreal to the real, to lead us from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. Today's topic: directing life in the right way. Life is very precious, and it is by the infinite grace and compassion of the Divine Supreme we have got this human life. God has given us all the faculties for us to raise ourselves, to reach Him. In fact, human life is the vehicle by which we have to reach the abode of the Divine. So, it is very important for us to direct the life in a proper way. The way how we normally live in this world is not completely in accordance with what we should really live. Consequently, we suffer on account of our wrongdoings and wrong way of life. But then we have to take steps to rectify. We should be really open-minded and straightforward and simple. That means we should be ready to correct the imperfections in us. That's the way of raising ourselves. When we try to unmark, that means when we try to unmask the mystery of the power of importance, we discover that this power in itself is born of something else. People are very conscious about self-importance. They want full attention upon themselves. But what happens as a result? We tend to become too much egoistic and lose the spiritual path. We should know that power comes from reality. It's not our own power. It is drawn from the divine source. When we consider something real, it becomes important, for it is reality that transforms itself into importance. If one considers that the unreal is important, One is only driving home the fact of the reality of unreality. According to Vedantic scriptures, only the existence of something makes it attractive and pleasant. Reality is a primeval force from which the power of importance springs forth. But then, what makes something real? Strange though it may look, it is a perceiver that makes something real or unreal. In other words, it is the state of one's mind that makes something real or unreal, important or unimportant. If the mind holds something to be real, then that something becomes important. It is therefore necessary to constantly examine and re-examine what we hold to be real. It is the mind that imparts or withdraws this power of importance. When the human mind is caught too much in the cross currents of sense pleasures, whatever be their form or name, it starts traveling in a circle. Essentially, it seeks lasting happiness, but fails to detach itself from ephemeral or temporary means of happiness. It seeks the joy of being established in the eternal self, but it is lured away by the pleasures of the world that imprison the little self. This is the story of man's inner struggles. So, the importance factor plays a vital role in all departments of life, particularly in the domain of self-improvement. If a person wants to change himself for better, he can do so only when he begins to feel its importance. He may have known for long that there is a possibility to make suitable changes in his life, but may have never felt its importance. When the dynamics of importance begins to function, dreams become concrete realities. Seeds become trees, and degeneration turns into sublime growth. Life, in fact, is just interplay of forces of importance and non-importance. In order to free the mind from the fetters of the senses and the ego, one must re-evaluate one's values. In our Indian education system, when a student in his school final exam scores marks contrary to his expectations, he is given the opportunity to get his answer sheets re-evaluated or retotaled. In many cases, most surprising results are seen. Similarly, whenever one's pleasure results are contrary to one's expectations, one must re-evaluate or retotal his mental concepts and efforts at getting happiness, and to our surprise, many revealing findings will spring forth. We need to re-examine what we consider as important and valuable. These days, there is much discussion about the importance of human values. Many books or scholarly articles are written on cultivating these values, and seminars and conferences are organized to discuss this. What is required is to study how one's power of importance is structured. An interesting story is told of a policeman who arrested a person at night and locked him up behind the bars. When the accused was produced before the magistrate the next morning, the magistrate asked the policeman, "What did this man do?" "Sir, he was arguing with a taxi driver," said the policeman. "But that is not a crime." "Yes," said the policeman. "But there was no taxi driver." Just as drunkenness produces an imaginary fear or a threatening situation, similarly, when one is intoxicated with eye and mind, one puts forth all kinds of arguments and imaginary fears. Swami Vivekananda says, "It is weakness to think that anyone is dependent on me and that I can do good to another. This belief is the mother of all attachments, and through this attachment comes all our pain. If only you act on the principle that the world is not for you and does not inevitably need you, it can do you no harm. So, by non-attachment, you overcome and deny the power of anything to act on you. Not that we do not know the importance of cultivating non-attachment. The problem is, while we showcase our so-called knowledge, which is just a wordy concept, our power of importance is employed elsewhere, deeply detached from our knowledge. What we call as misery is generally a case of misapplication of the power of importance. Whenever we feel miserable, we seek power to redress our grievances. In our elusive search for power, we begin attaching too much importance to administrative and political power. Of course, everything has its place of relative importance. Politics has its importance, and so also economic prosperity and social security. But assume that politics and economics will solve all our problems is crude ignorance. While economic development and social security are important, they are inadequate to make a person happy and content. Wealth, says Aristotle, is evidently not the good that we are seeking, for it is merely use and for the sake of something else. There are some people who always want to be centers of attention and importance. An English writer says, such people are so much enamored by their desire to be a center of attraction that whenever they go to a funeral, they are sorry that they are not the corpse. They keep singing their own praises, but it is an unaccompanied solo. A man hunch, an awakened person, not bothered by acquisition of wealth and security, and often ahead of his times, learns to see life differently. He rightly unravels the cause of his unhappiness, which lies in his attitude towards life. The longer I live, says Charles Swindoll, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude to me is more important than facts. It is more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than success, than what other people say or do. It is more important than appearance, gift or skill. It will make or break a company, a church, a home. I am convinced that life is 10%. What happens to me and 90% how I react to it. In Sri Ramakrishna's words, the important thing is The mind. Where does the mind dwell? That's important. Life is not only operated from outside, but has an inside too. In fact, it is a vital truth that our thoughts, more than ours or others' actions, fuel our life. We live on stimulus and response principle. Stimulus comes from many directions, but response to a situation is ours. That's what makes the difference, our response. The law of importance states that everything is important, less or more. In a particular circumstance, determined by our response to it, our responses are based upon our experience or the degree of maturity we enjoy. Sometimes we are able to gauge the long-term importance of an attitude or an event, but many times we understand only its short-term importance. Sri Ramakrishna's homespun story drives home this truth. He said, it has come in the gospel. One offers a price for an article according to one's capital. A rich man said to the servant, "Take this diamond to the market and let me know how different people price it. Take it first of all to the eggplant seller." The servant took the diamond to the eggplant seller. He examined it, turning it over in the palm of his hand, and said, "Brother, I can give 9 shares of eggplants for it." "Friend," said the servant, "a little more, say 10 shares." The eggplant seller replied, "No, I have already quoted above the market price. I have quoted above the market price. You may give it to me if that price suits you." The servant laughed. He went back to his master and said, "Sir, he would give me only 9 shares of eggplants and not one more." He said he had offered more than the market price. The master smiled and said, "Now take it to the cloth dealer. The other man deals only in eggplants. What does he know about a diamond? The cloth dealer has a little more capital. Let us see how much he offers for it." The servant went to the cloth dealer and said, "Will you buy this? How much will you pay for it?" The merchant said, "It's a good thing. I can make a nice ornament out of it. I will give you 900 rupees for it." "Brother," said the servant, "offer a little more and I will sell it to you. Give me at least 1,000 rupees. The cloth dealer said, "Friend, don't press me for more. I have offered more than the market price. I cannot give a rupee more. Suit yourself." Laughing, the servant returned to his master and said, "He won't give a rupee more than 900. He too said he had quoted above the market price. The master laughed with a laugh. "Now take it to a jeweler. Let us see what he has to say." The servant went to a jeweler. The jeweler glanced at the diamond and said at once, "I will give you 100,000 rupees for it." This is how the importance index fluctuates, depending on what we think as important. The important thing is somehow to cultivate devotion to God and love for Him. Sri Ramakrishna was very clear about it. What's the use of knowing many things? It is enough to cultivate love of God by following any of the paths. When you have this love, you are sure to attain God. Afterwards, if it is necessary, God will explain everything to you and tell you about the other paths as well. It's enough for you to develop love of God. You have no need of many opinions and discussions. You have come to the orchard to eat mangoes. Enjoy them to your heart's content. You don't need to count the branches and leaves on the trees. It is wise to follow the attitude of Hanuman. Hanuman, the great devotee of Rama. He said, I don't know the day of the week, the phase of the moon, or the position of the stars. I only contemplate Rama. Sri Ramakrishna said to Doctor, for the seekers of God, the constant company of holy man is necessary. The disease of worldly people has become chronic, as it were. They should carry out the instruction of holy men. What will they gain by merely listening to their advice? They must not only take the prescribed medicine, but also follow a strict diet. Diet is important. Doctor said, yes, it is a diet more than anything else that causes the cure. In the Upanishads, a question is raised. What is that by knowing which one knows everything? The answer given is Brahman, or the primordial being from whom the whole universe has sprung forth. On similar lines, one might ask, what is that value or that power of importance cultivating which all other values or importances are cultivated? Surely, it is the ancient and yet ever modern ideal of self-realization that can be said as that universal value. When a person keeps this ideal as a central value, this gives rise to two derivatives. One, he learns the difference between the ultimate and the relative. And second, he discovers the core of all values. To know the difference between the ultimate and the relative power of importance is to understand that man is divine and the manifestation of divinity is of paramount importance. Whatever helps in discovering that is important. Relative needs are important to the extent they help one to gain that supreme importance. The core or seed of values is to know that man is not just a biological and intellectual unit. He is essentially spiritual and has spiritual needs. It's only when he sets out to know this spiritual nature that he begins to cultivate values in life. Or else, why should a man seek to be good, honest and kind? His real nature is most manifest when he is seeking his divine legacy. Man's inner opulence lies covered, as it were. He doesn't understand this inner value trove and thus subjects himself to endless miseries in life. There is a Sanskrit verse which says, Kamaha krodhascha lobhascha dehe tishtanti taskaraha jnanaratnapaharaya tasma jagrata jagrata. It warrants passion, anger and greed occupy the body like thieves, intent on seizing the gems of wisdom. Therefore, be awake, be awake. The power of importance is the power of seeking that everyone possesses. What is required is to understand how it molds and fashions our life, and then channel its force in the required direction. We have to make a distinction between the relative importance and the ultimate importance and fix priorities. Only then shall we be able to rightly direct our life. There is a Vedic prayer which says, O Lord, lead me from the unreal to the real. In other words, lead my intellect from that which is of relative importance to that which is ultimately important. For then only can one be led from darkness to light or death to immortality. And that is important. Nishtha or devotion to one ideal is very important to maintain the spiritual attitude. There is a story of Hanuman, who was a great worshipper of Sri Ramchandra. This incident was said by Swami Vivekananda in one of his talks. Just as the Christians worship Christ as the incarnation of God, so the Hindus worship many incarnations of God. According to them, God came 9 times in India and will come once more. When he came as Sri Ramchandra, this Hanuman was his great worshipper. Hanuman lived very long and was a great yogi. During Hanuman's lifetime, Sri Ramchandra came again on this earth as Sri Krishna. Hanuman, being a great yogi, knew that the same God had come back again as Sri Krishna. He came and served Sri Krishna. But he said to him, "O Lord, I want to see that Rama form of yours." Sri Krishna said, "Is not this form enough? I am this Krishna, I am this Rama. All these forms are mine." Hanuman said, "I know that, but the Rama form is for me." The Lord of Janaki and the Lord of Sri are the same. They are both the incarnations of the Supreme Self. Yet, the lotus-eyed Rama is my all in all. This is Nishtha, knowing that all these different forms of worship are right, yet sticking to one steadfastly and having respect for all other forms. Sri Ramakrishna said to the Kathak, the gopis had ecstatic love, unswerving and single-minded devotion to one ideal. Do you know what devotion to one ideal is like? It is like the attitude of a daughter-in-law in the family. She serves all the members of the family, her brothers-in-law, father-in-law, husband, and so forth, bringing them water to wash their feet, fetching their towels, arranging their seats, and the like. But with all that, with her husband, she has a special relationship. After many entreaties to the doorkeeper, the gopis entered the royal court in Mathura, where Sri Krishna was seated as a king. The doorkeeper took them to him, but at the sight of King Krishna wearing the royal turban, the gopis bent down their heads and said among themselves, "Who is this man with a turban on his head? Should we violate our chaste love for Krishna by talking to him? Where is our beloved Krishna with the yellow robe and the bewitching crest with the peacock feather?" Did you observe the single-minded love of the gopis for Krishna? The ideal of Vrindavan is unique. Next point is intensity of prayer. Prayer also plays a very important part in our life going in the right way. We have to pray properly. This story also was given by Swami Vivekananda in one of his talks. All these talks Swamiji gave in America. A certain person was praying in a garden. The person belonging to the community, that community was very regular in their prayers. When the time comes, wherever they are, they just fall down on the ground and get up and fall down and so on. One of them was in a garden when the call for prayer came. So he knelt there, prostrate on the ground, to pray. A girl was waiting in the garden for her lover, and she saw him on the other side. And in her hurry to reach him, she did not see the man prostrate and walked over him. The man who was praying became very mad when his body was walked over. So he wanted to kill the girl. The girl was a smart one, and she said, "Stop that nonsense. You are a fool and a hypocrite." "What? I am a hypocrite?" "Yes. I am going to meet my earthly lover, and I did not see you there. But you are going to meet your heavenly lover, and should not know that a girl was passing over your body." The next point is true contentment. It's a wet night, and Buddha comes to the cowherd's hut and gathers in to the wall under the dripping drops of rain water. The rain is pouring down and the wind rising. Within, the cowherd catches a glimpse of a face through the window and thinks, "Ah, yellow garb. Stay there. It's good enough for you." And then he begins to sing. "My cattle are housed, and the fire burns bright. My wife is safe, and my babes sleep sweet. Therefore ye may reign, if ye will, O clouds, tonight." And the Buddha answers from without, "My mind is controlled, my senses are all gathered in, my heart firm, therefore ye may reign, if ye will, O clouds, tonight." Again the cowherd says, "The fields are reaped, and the hay is fast in the barn. The stream is full, and the roads are firm. Therefore ye may reign, if ye will, O clouds, tonight." And so it goes on, till at last the cowherd rises in contrition and wonder and becomes a disciple. Or what would be more beautiful than the barber's story? Swami Vivekananda gives all the stories in his complete works. "The Blessed One passed by my house, the barber's. I ran, but he turned and awaited me, the barber. I said, 'May I speak, O Lord, with thee?' And he said, 'Yes.' 'Yes to me?' The barber. And I said, 'Is nirvana for such as I?' And he said, 'Yes, even for me, the barber.' And I said, 'May I follow after thee?' And he said, 'Oh yes, even I, the barber.' And I said, 'May I stay, O Lord, near you?' And he said, 'Yes, even to me, the poor barber.' Our predicament is, again Swami Vivekananda says, he refers to a story in the Hindu legend that the Lord was once incarnated on earth as Varaha, a pig. He had a pig mate, and in course of times several little pigs were born to him. He was very happy with his family, living in the mire, squealing with joy, forgetting his divine glory and lordship. The gods became exceedingly concerned and came to the earth to beg him to give up the pig body and return to heaven. But the Lord would have none of that. He drove them away. He said he was very happy and did not want to be disturbed. Seeing no other course, the gods destroyed the pig body of the Lord. At once he regained his divine majesty and was astonished that he could have found any joy in being a pig. People behave in the same way. Whenever they hear of the impersonal God, they say, what will become of my individuality? My individuality will go. Next time that thought comes, remember the pig and then think what an infinite mine of happiness you have, each one of you. How pleased you are with your present condition. But when you realize what you truly are, you will be astonished that you are unwilling to give up your sense life. What is there in your personality? It is any better than that pig's life. And this you do not want to give up. Lord bless us all. Another incident, the drill business in the temples and churches, kneeling down at a certain time, standing at ease, and all the drill nonsense, all mechanical, with the mind thinking of something else, all this has nothing to do with real religion. There is a great prophet in India, Guru Nanak, born 700 years ago. This also was said by Swami Vivekananda. Some of you have heard of these Sikhs, the fighting people. Guru Nanak was the founder and also a follower of the Sikh religion. One day he went to the Mohammedans' mosque. These Mohammedans are feared in their own country. Guru Nanak went in and there was a big mosque and the Mohammedans were standing in prayer. They stand in lines, they kneel down, stand up and repeat certain words at the same times, and one fellow leads. So Guru Nanak went there. And when the mullah was saying, in the name of the most merciful and kind God, teacher of all teachers, Guru Nanak began to smile. He says, look at that hypocrite. The mullah got into a passion. Why do you smile? Because you are not praying, my friend. That's why I am smiling. Not praying? Certainly not. There is no prayer in you. The mullah was very angry. And he went and laid a complaint before a magistrate and said, this heathen rascal dares to come to our mosque and smiles at us when we are praying. The only punishment is instant death. Kill him. Guru Nanak was brought before the magistrate and asked why he smiled. Because he was not praying. What was he doing? The magistrate asked. I will tell you what he was doing if you will bring him before me. The magistrate ordered the mullah to be brought. And when he came, the magistrate said, here is the mullah. Now explain why you laughed when he was praying. Guru Nanak said, give the mullah a piece of the Quran to swear on in the mosque. In the mosque when he was saying Allah, Allah, Guru Nanak said, in the mosque, when he was saying Allah, Allah, he was thinking of some chicken he had left at home. The poor mullah was confounded. He was little more sincere than the others, and he confessed he was thinking of the kitchen. And so they let the Sikh go. And the magistrate said to the mullah, don't go to the mosque again. It is better not to go at all than to commit blasphemy there and hypocrisy. Do not go when you do not feel like praying. Do not be like a hypocrite. And do not think of the chicken and say the name of the most merciful and blissful God. Concept of heaven. If we had a heaven like that desired by those to whom sense enjoyment is the very end of existence, then we would not progress. That would be the most terrible curse we could pronounce on the soul. Is this all we can come to? A little weeping and dancing, and then to die like a dog? What a curse you pronounce on the head of humanity when you long for these things. That's what you do when you cry after the joys of this world, for you do not know what true joy is. What philosophy insists on is not to give up joys, but to know what joy really is. The Norwegian heaven is a tremendous fighting place where they all sit before Odin. They have a wild boar hunt, and then they go to war and slash each other to pieces. But in some way or other, after a few hours of such fighting, the wounds are all healed up, and they go into a hall where the boar has been roasted and they have carousal. And then the wild boar takes form again, ready to be hunted the next day. This is much the same thing as our heaven, not a bit worse. Only our ideas may be a little more refined. We want to hunt wild boars and get to a place where all enjoyments will continue, just as the Norwegian imagines that the wild boar is hunted and eaten every day and recovered the next day. Again, Swami Vivekananda says another story. All the misery we have is of our own choosing. Such is our nature. The old Chinaman, who having been kept in prison for 60 years, was released on the coronation of a new emperor. He exclaimed when he came out that he could not live, he must go back to his horrible dungeon among the rats and mice. He could not bear the light. So he asked them to kill him or send him back to the prison. And he was sent back. Exactly similar is the condition of all men. We run headlong after all sorts of misery and are unwilling to be freed from them. Every day we run after pleasure, and before we reach it, we find it is gone. It has slipped through our fingers. Still we do not cease from our mad pursuit, but on and on we go, blinded fools that we are. Another story Swami Vivekananda says, do you remember the story of Solon and Croesus? The king said to the great sage that Asia Minor was a very happy place. And the sage asked him, who is the happiest man? I have not seen anyone very happy. Nonsense, said Croesus. I am the happiest man in the world. Wait, sir, till the end of your life. Don't be in a hurry, replied the sage, and went away. In course of time, that king was conquered by the Persians, and they ordered him to be burnt alive. The funeral pyre was prepared, and when poor Croesus saw it, he cried out, Solon, Solon. On being asked to whom he referred, he told his story, and the Persian emperor was touched and saved his life. We are all like this in the world. A legend tells how once Narad said to Krishna, O Lord, please show me your Maya, your elusive power. A few days passed away, and Krishna asked Narad to make a trip with him towards a desert. And after walking for several miles, Lord Krishna said, Narad, I am thirsty. Can you fetch some water for me? I will go at once, sir, and get you water. So Narad went. At a little distance there was a village. He entered the village in search of water and knocked at a door which was opened by a most beautiful young girl. At the sight of her, he immediately forgot that his master was waiting for water, perhaps dying for the want of it. He forgot everything and began to talk with the girl. All that day he did not return to his master. The next day he was again at the house talking to the girl. That talk ripened into love. He asked the father for the daughter, and they were married and lived there and had children. Thus 12 years passed. His father-in-law died. He inherited his property. He lived as he seemed to think, a very happy life with his wife and children, his fields and his cattle and so forth. Then came a flood. One night the river rose until it overflowed its banks and flooded the whole village. Houses fell, men and animals were swept away and drowned, and another child was on his shoulders, and he was trying to ford this tremendous flood. After a few steps he found the current was too strong, and the child on his shoulders fell and was borne away. A cry of despair came from Narad. In trying to save that child, he lost his grip upon one of the others, and it also went lost. At last his wife, whom he clasped with all his might, was torn away by the current, and he was thrown out on the bank, weeping and wailing in bitter lamentation. Behind him there came a gentle voice, "My child, where is the water? You went to fetch a pitcher of water, and I am waiting for you. You have been gone for quite half an hour." "Half an hour?" Narad exclaimed. 12 whole years had passed through his mind, and all these scenes had happened in half an hour. And this is Maya, the elusive power. We are all under this tremendous net of Maya, under the influence of this elusive power. We are losing all our wisdom. Truth will be out sooner or later. Another point Swami Vivekananda is trying to impress upon us about directing life in the right way. There is a certain king who had a huge number of courtiers, and each one of these courtiers declared he was ready to sacrifice his life for his master, and that he was the most sincere being ever born. In course of time, a monk came to the king. The king said to him that there was a king who had so many sincere courtiers, as he had said. The monk smiled and said he did not believe that. The king said, the sannyasin, he could test it if he liked. So the monk declared that he would make a great sacrifice by which the king's reign would be extended very long, with the condition that they should be made a small tank into which each one of his courtiers should pour a pitcher of milk in the dark of night. The king smiled and said, "Is this the test?" and asked his courtiers to come to him and told them what was to be done. They all expressed their joyful assent to the proposal and returned. In the dead of night, they came and emptied their pitchers into the tank. But in the morning, it was found full of water only. The courtiers were assembled and questioned about the matter. Each one of them had thought there would be so many pitchers of milk that his water would not be detected. Unfortunately, most of us have the same idea, and we do our share of work as did the courtiers in the story. Everybody was putting water only instead of milk. Another story Swamiji says, to worship is inherent in every man's nature. Only the highest philosophy can rise to pure abstraction. So, a man will ever personify his God in order to worship him. This is very good, as long as the symbol, be it what may, is worshipped as a symbol of the divinity behind and not in and for itself. Above all, we need to free ourselves from the superstition of believing because it is in the books. There was once a stag, proud and free, and he talked in a lordly fashion to his child. Look at me. See my powerful horns. With one thrust, I can kill a man. It is a fine thing to be a stag. Just then the sound of the huntsman's bugle was heard in the distance, and the stag precipitately fled, followed by his wondering child. When they had reached a place of safety, he inquired, "Why do you fly before man, O my father, when you are so strong and brave?" The stag answered, "My child, I know I am strong and powerful, but when I hear that sound, something seizes me and makes me fly whether I will or no." So with us, we hear the bugle sound of the laws laid down in the books, habits and old superstitions lay hold of us, and before we know it, we are fast bound and forget our real nature, which is freedom. Strength is the test. One has to be really strong. There is an old story of an astrologer who came to a king and said, "O king, you are going to die in 6 months." The king was frightened out of his wits and was almost about to die then and there from fear. But his minister was a clever man. And this man told the king that these astrologers were fools. The king would not believe him. So the minister saw no other way to make the king see that they were fools, but to invite the astrologer to the palace again. There he asked him if his calculations were correct. The astrologer said there could not be a mistake. But to satisfy him, he went through the whole of the calculations again and then said that they were perfectly correct. The king's face became livid. The minister said to the astrologer, "Well, when do you think that you will die?" He said, "In 12 years," was the reply. The minister quickly drew his sword and separated the astrologer's head from the body and said to the king, "Do you see this liar? He is dead this moment. If you want your nation to live, keep away from all these things. The only test of good things is that they make us strong. Do something religious." I read somewhere in a funny book that an American vessel was being foundered in the sea. The men were desperate and as a last solace wanted some religious service being done. There was Uncle Josh on board, who was an elder in the Presbyterian church. They all began to entreat, "Do something religious, Uncle Josh. We are all going to die." Uncle Joseph took his hat in his hand and took up a collection on the spot. A case of complete self-sacrifice. All these stories were told by Vivekananda in his complete works. They are really wonderful. This idea of complete self-sacrifice is illustrated in the following story. After the battle of Kurukshetra, the 5 Pandava brothers performed a great sacrifice and made very large gifts to the poor. All people expressed amazement at the greatness and richness of the sacrifice and said that such a sacrifice the world had never seen before. But after the ceremony, there came a little mongoose, half of whose body was golden and the other half brown, and he began to roll on the floor of the sacrificial hall. He said to those around, "You are all liars. This is no sacrifice." "What?" they exclaimed. "You say this is no sacrifice? Do you not know how much money and jewels were poured out to the poor, and everyone became rich and happy? This was the most wonderful sacrifice any man ever performed." But the mongoose said, "Look, there was once a little village, and in it there dwelt a poor Brahmin with his wife, his son, and his son's wife. They were very poor and lived on small gifts made to them for preaching and teaching. There came in that land a 3 years famine, and the poor Brahmin suffered more than ever. At last, when the family had starved for days, the father brought home one morning a little barley flour, which he had been fortunate enough to obtain, and he divided it into 4 parts, one for each member of the family. They prepared it for their meal, and just as they were about to eat, there was a knock at the door. The father opened it, and there stood a guest. Now in India, a guest is a sacred person. He is as a god for the time being, and must be treated as such. So the poor Brahmin said, 'Come in, sir, you are welcome.' He set before the guest his own portion of the food, which the guest quickly ate, and said, 'Oh, sir, you have killed me. I have been starving for 10 days, and this little bit has but increased my hunger.' And the wife said to her husband, 'Give my share.' But the husband said, 'Not so.' The wife, however, insisted, saying, 'He is a poor man, and it is our duty as householders to see that he is fed. And it is my duty as a wife to give him my portion, seeing that you have no more to offer him.' Then she gave her share to the guest, which the guest ate, and said he was still burning with hunger. So the son said, 'Take my portion also. It is the duty of a son to help his father to fulfill his obligation.' The guest ate that, but remained still unsatisfied. So the son's wife gave him her portion also. That was sufficient, and the guest departed, blessing them. That night, those 4 people died of starvation. A few granules of that flour had fallen on the floor, and when I rolled my body on them, half of it became golden, as you see," the mongoose said. "Since then I have been traveling all over the world, hoping to find another sacrifice like that, but nowhere have I found one. Nowhere else has the other half of my body has been turned into gold. That's why I say there is no sacrifice." So like this, Swami Vivekananda has given most uplifting teachings through his talks to the people in the West. How it is very important to know the importance of life, the real importance of life, the priority in our life, and how we should cultivate the values and develop our character and pursue the spiritual path. That way we have to direct our life, and that is the right way of directing. Then only we will be able to have the glimpse of the experience of the divine bliss. Thank you very much. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. May the Lord protect us, may He nourish us. May we not be fruitful and enlightened. May we not hate each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.